2009 was the end of a 30 years war between the government forces of Sri Lanka and the Tamil Tigers, who were fighting to defend the Tamil homeland and the Tamil people. And it started off because there was a 30 years of state terrorism, and against state terrorism for 30 years. After 30 years, the Tamils gave up their non-violent protest and took up to militant struggle, and it became a spiral of violence, the government state terrorism versus the Tamil militant actions.
The Tamil Tigers start an armed struggle because they felt endangered. In your opinion, what was the legitimacy of their struggle?
No, I think the notion, the perception of discrimination that the Tamil community had, I think was justified insofar as you mentioned the 1956 language policy. You had Sinhala made the official language of the country until 1987, and then it was changed to make Tamil also the official language of the country, and that was through Indian intervention with the English-Sri Lanka Accord. Then you had, in 1972, you had the first Republican constitution of this country, which made Sri Lanka a unitary state, Sinhala the official language, and you also gave Buddhism the foremost place amongst all religions. So in a sense, the whole perception created was of a state which was Sinhala Buddhist, majoritarian in its outlook, in its philosophy, in its ideology. So you have a majoritarian mindset which has been stalked over the years, and you've had the communal riots in 58, the worst one was the pogrom in 1983, where thousands were killed. And you also have, you've had state-sponsored colonization in areas which had traditionally had predominantly Tamil population. So you put all of these things together, and there is a very definite basis for the perception of discrimination, and I think there's no two words about that. The issue, therefore, is the argument for secession justified? Yeah. Now, I think that has come about because every time there have been negotiations between representatives of the Tamil polity and the Sinhala state, the other party in opposition has made sure that any agreement signed will not be implemented. So it's been broken promises right through the 60-odd years of our history, independent history. So the argument that came up in the 1970s that was all these tired old lawyers who are our representatives in Parliament who have made agreements which are never met, are never implemented. Now we will take it into our own hands.
Do you think the LTTE was representing the Tamil population?
In terms of the popular support for the LTTE, in terms of hardcore support, I think it was, at a rough guess, and I underline the one that it's a rough guess, I would say that maybe 20 or 30% at the very most of the population supported the LTTE. However, what happened is that you had sympathy for the LTTE amongst the Tamil population precisely because the Sri Lankan government wasn't addressing the grievances and aspirations of the Tamil people. There used to be the saying that, as far as the Tamil people and the LTTE are concerned, the relationship with bodyguards, not rulers. As long as they needed a bodyguard, the LTTE was there. That was fine. But given a choice, they wouldn't choose them as their rulers.
First of all, I want to make one issue clear is that the Sri Lankan government, over the last 40 years, it has never been interested in political solutions. And like this, if you look at the military budget, if you look at the civil war situation prevailing in the country for the last 25 years, and LTTE was kind of a creation, was the response to the Sri Lankan government's militarization, the militarization of the Sinhala society, militarization of the state. And the Tamil society did fight for nearly 20 years, and like the non-violent and peaceful agitations. The response was that very violent responses and more disempowerment. So the LTTE was seen as a kind of an historical necessity.
Can you explain the almost unanimous support against the LTTE?
The international politics that was happening, for instance, with the 9/11 in the United States, and then the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi on the other hand, I think these factors have also influenced the way the Sri Lankan government manipulated the war on terror, that to taking this war against LTTE in the name of addressing the LTTE, that it had tried to address the entire Tamil question, wiping the Tamil population. It's like addressing the poverty. If you are addressing a poverty, is to eliminate the poor people.
From the perspective of the government of India, which were the alternative solutions to the conflict?
Well, as far as I am concerned, I do not think there could have been a different approach to what happened in Sri Lanka as far as the government of India is concerned. And since the murder of Rajiv Gandhi by the LTTE, there was an official position within the government of India, irrespective of which party is in power, that they had to get rid of LTTE.